Scientists assert that the globe has, in its 4.5 billion year life, been murderously inconsistent with its thermostat. It's shot from toilet seat in the Shetland Island cold to my eyeballs were sweating warm on multiple occasions. Some scientists, you may also have heard, claim that our CO2 emissions since the Industrial Revolution are what finally saw the frost fairs on the Thames and ice skating on Dutch canals relegated to blurry yet attractive pastels and watercolours for posterity. So, as we hurtle through climate change, how are we to know which we are currently in? That's the question most climate change deniers pose. If we believe scientists who say two things are possible, how can we trust their assertion it's the one that's our fault? It's a reasonable argument, isn't it? The scientists can't say, well, isn't it sensible to assume it's, because that's when they get cut off and asked if it's their own billions they're asking to be spent on revolutionising the power grid whilst it's still very much in full swing and getting more demanding. It's tricky. I've tried to write books this way and it's soul destroying. Just as you're getting to the world-beating climax of the story, a fatal flaw in the premise reveals itself, undermining everything. You'd rather salvage it than go back and start again, but it's all tainted. This is how you end up with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. In my opinion, I'd rather not go the cancel culture route. I prefer replacement. So, I don't pour scorn on Michael Jackson or J.K. Rowling because they're nonsense or can't stay out of debates about other people. Their works didn't do those things, so we find new works like theirs, such as Bruno Mars or the Thursday Murder Club. They're the next step, like windmills. I suppose being replaced has the same end result as being cancelled. I told you it was complicated. But it's the same with replacing the coal, smoke, child labour, workhouses and accident rates to make a farmer blush of the Industrial Revolution. They were wonderful, but let's move on. I read the algorithms serve me because I tap them, a lot of green stories. So I don't know if you see even half as many as me, but what all power plants have in common is that they're just over-engineered kettles. The fabled, always 30 years away promise of nuclear fusion reactors, for all their scientific law-bending recreating the sun in a room the shape of a donut on Earth physics, sounds amazing until you realise that all that money and engineering is being poured into boiling water in a slightly more efficient way. Water soaks up an enormous amount of heat. That's why your kettle, boiler, shower and washing machines are all the most expensive to run. 100 degrees to boil, and you constantly have to be injecting more and more energy to reach that. Also, you can push steam past some fans that turn a magnet inside a copper coil to generate a current. The only benefit is the abundance of water, because it's not as if the fuels we use, like nuclear, heavy hydrogen, or the holy trinity of fossils, are exactly easy to procure themselves. The energy generated by power stations must exactly match the energy demanded, to the millisecond. The grid is extremely clever. Modern windmills are often told to stop spinning by the grid because we don't have many places to store excess energy if we're producing too much. So it has to stop, whether it's windy or not. Otherwise, there will be flickering lights everywhere. Batteries are an option, but in hilly places they've been using another kind of battery for generations: lakes. Simply, when you have an excess of energy, you pump water up to a higher lake, and when you need the energy, you release the water back down across a turbine. It's a gravity battery, and there are lots of variations. Dams and paddle wheels in rivers are all essentially gravity batteries, but anything that moves can generate electricity essentially. I have genuinely actually been kept up at night thinking about a story based on a world where Michael Faraday is staring at his generator thinking about ways to make it spin when he thinks of Dutch windmills. Admittedly, I can see why this wouldn't have taken off for Faraday, as everyone's always keen to point out, there isn't always wind, but for modern ones out at sea, at the height they build them, there hardly ever isn't a breeze. I try to imagine if the world had got its shit together to roll out the use of wind and water from the 1830s onwards, and it genuinely makes me angry. Not because of the climate, but because of all the shit that comes with fossil fuels. Demand, takeovers, wars, payoffs, displacement, monopolies, cost to the consumers, all of it disappears if the whole world had decided to generate the electricity it needed by building wind farms and storing the excess. Think about the rate of progress between that age and now, and the progress we've seen having only just given green energy our full attention. What if we'd started nearly 200 years ago? The Mersey might freeze over, but we'd still have heaters. Solar is the most fertile ground at the moment, as unlike wind farms, the prices keep falling and the efficiency breakthroughs are still coming. The price of solar has apparently fallen by 82% since 2010. That sounds affordable even to me. I reckon if a private jet fell by that much, it'd be in my price range. But sadly, I still can't. Even with incentives and the long-term savings, I cannot bring myself to get solar installed. Partly because we may move soon, partly because the tech I'd install today might go out of date, but mostly because I can't actually afford it yet. This is why I don't understand solar farms. Why convert a field when you could just ask to use my roof? I'd even put the mad cockapoo on a leash for that. I don't think we're particularly wasteful, but we're also not exactly energy conscious. Don't get me wrong, I do want to see the sea covered in wind turbines above and coral reefs below, and every rooftop glistening with solar panels. I want the energy of every wave, every tide, every river captured around the globe. I want all the space solar we're missing around the Earth beamed onto my panels, and beneath us, I want all the free lava to be used by Starbucks to superheat the caffeine extraction of my coffee grounds. I want to be able to throw food away without getting angry. I want to eat meat without someone having to raise it for slaughter. I want to recycle everything I own. I want birds, rabbits, and baby deers to greet me at the window with a song every morning. I'll settle, however, for the pleasing thought that the struggle to make the national grid green will be met at the other end by making our lives more efficient and supplementing those lower demands with our own energy and storage. I could privately get solar panels, but it won't be enjoyable at an individual scale. In my opinion, private companies, even if forced by government hands, are the only way we can afford to make this green transition. Capitalism largely got us into this mess, so funneling it with a heavy carbon tax might force companies' transitions, or, more likely at least, suddenly care about dodging that tax even more than the ones they're dodging already. For example, I've just received a brilliant electric car on a company lease program, which I was pleased to be offered as a genuinely tempting and affordable way to adopt an EV. God knows I couldn't have done it any other way. Before anyone starts on the negative environmental impact of the electric car or that hydrogen cars are the future, you've been watching nearly as many Top Gear repeats as me, haven't you? Let me say this, the environmental impact of EVs is initially worse, but after just 2 years it's better off. And as the grid gets more and more decarbonised, it easily eclipses the impact of a fossil car. Yes, hydrogen sounds great, but it's difficult to store and transport safely. The atoms are too small to keep contained, and though it sounds very simple to produce, just pass electricity through water, more or less, it takes approximately 5 times as much energy to split it from its most obvious source, water, than what you get in return. Even using green energy to split it doesn't hide the obvious flaws. The alternative is splitting natural gas, but this uses more energy than you get than if you just burnt the gas as a fossil fuel, and none of these methods are very decarbonising. So let's park hydrogen in the scientist requires miracles folder. I'm very happy with the car, even for the BEV's nemesis, the long journey. Its 350-mile range isn't concerning, and when I'm doing that kind of drive, I reckon I'll want a break, and the superfast chargers genuinely can top it up in half an hour. Even in the short period we've been earnestly making EVs, the average ranges have grown considerably. We're at the start of this innovation, and this is the worst it's going to be. Let's also not forget how much fucking cooler and smarter electric cars can be. Self-driving may be in some fossil cars, but its spiritual home and future potential is in electric, gamified e-cars. I don't believe in a pro-green future because I believe humans are causing global warming. I'm probably with most of you and reckon even if we are responsible, we'll survive, we'll innovate and adapt. We survived the tail end of the last ice age and the Transformers movies, we can survive this. I reckon we need green just because it makes sense. And if it had always been this way since Faraday, then if somebody proposed fossil fuels today, even promising all the efficiency we've gotten out of them, they'd be laughed away. It just seems silly with all this free energy around us, waiting to be captured. I cannot see the love affair for ordinary people wanting to keep hold of fossil fuels and disregard green ambitions, like there's something romantic about the smoke. I get that lots of jobs depend on it, but join the party. Everyone's job is at risk of technology, but creating new industries never caused employment to dip. It's like campaigning to save asbestos, even though it's necessarily being replaced with a whole new industry, just to deal with its disappointing consequences. Even if we aren't responsible, we're still making it worse, and although evolution never intended us to be the guardians of all life on Earth, by some accident we have ended up with the fate of every being on this planet in our hands. We're their only chance of survival. They depend on us now not to fuck it up, not to be so concerned with today's stock market growth. Let's be honest, there's more than enough money in the world, and what's the point of making sure it stays in its current hands so it can be buried under yet more wealth tomorrow? There's only one planet you're ever going to live on, only one place you, your family, your friends, your children, and your money will ever be able to call home. All we'll ever know is the same home for everything else as well. In honor of the man who discovered leaded petrol was toxifying the atmosphere and tirelessly fought the automotive industry's claims that lead was safe. He discovered the age of the Earth and invented ice core studies without which we would not have climatological science. Claire Patterson, the most remarkable man you've never heard of.